Andrew, baptism of fire are the three words that spring to mind. Give us a review of your first 3 months in this job.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's been really, really hard, I think it's fair to say. But it's hard, but it's good because it's giving us, all the things that we're doing at the moment is giving us a huge amount of optimism to look forward to. Clearly, there's been a number of challenges as we've come in. I mean, I think the first thing to say has been, we go through a number of things that happened in the early days. We had obviously the purchase of the training ground, which came with a 2,000 member gym and a building which had no investment in it over the last sort of 18 to 20 years, so a very, very tired building. And we needed to look at ways and spend a lot of time to make sure not only were we integrating the staff into the football club at Roco, but looking at what we needed to do in terms of investing in the building. There's some real difficulties. We had a spa which was going to collapse. We had to close that down, and we had to look at play football pitches as well, which quite frankly were condemned. And once they'd been condemned, we had to shut them down. Again, they'd had no investment on them. We then had the fantastic work that's going on in the stadium, a commitment by the owners of £11 million into refurbishing Fratton Park, a decision that had to be done because we were hurtling towards a capacity of less than 10,000. So there's a lot of pain in terms of what we're going to have to go through this season. It's involved people having to move seats. Some of them have sat in for several years at Fratton Park whilst this work is underdone. But the impact of not doing it was going to be reduced capacity. So it's caused us a lot of issues, particularly coming out of COVID. The initial situation this year was that I think everybody was planning that we wouldn't return to full crowds for some considerable time, that the government would allow football to continue as spectators, but probably at levels of about 25% of capacity in stadiums. And the Football League did an incredible job lobbying government to enable us to get back to the situation we find ourselves in today, where there are no restrictions. But that came at 3 weeks' notice, and coupled with all the moves that we've had to do, all the things we've had to do to change people, 3-week programme is simply not long enough. The alternative we had, probably the easy option, would have been just to keep the flexi tickets, and it would have been a free-for-all. People could have just purchased any seat and sat anywhere in the stadium. But I'm a football fan, and that didn't seem right, that people who had sat in their seats for several years saw somebody else sitting there. And so we gave ourselves a lot of pain. Perhaps we might not have been able to do that, but I still think that was the right thing to do, and we will get through this. We've got some challenges coming up in January when the North Stand lower seats will be redeveloped, and that will involve relocating. But if there's one lesson we've learned from this process, it's to involve supporters in that consultation programme as to how we're going to be moving them. And that's something we're going to kick off in October. I've had a few volunteers come forward who'd said they'd like to be part of that process, and that's something that will take place going forward. We had massive issues in terms of the need to replace 65% of the squad. And I've read a lot of comments about reduced budgets going on, but the fact of the matter is we've ended up at the end of the transfer window with probably the highest budget that we've had for some years. Slightly higher than last year, but still a very, very big budget. The manager has done a fantastic job in identifying players that he wants to fit to his philosophy and style of play. And again, that takes time to come through. And I think I got criticised at the outset by saying to people, this might take a few windows to get right, 1, 2, 3. You don't just turn it on and get it right from day one when you're replacing a lot of players. Some players have been here a long time, but also introducing a brand new style of football. So I think there's a bit of patience. We got off to a fantastic start with those 10 points from the first 4 games and stalled since then. But perhaps, looking forward, we had a disappointing result on Tuesday, but certainly against Charlton, we could see how exciting that football could be, particularly in the first half of the game. So those things have all happened. And then, of course, we've had some issues elsewhere in the club with the, with the racial discriminatory comments in the academy, which we had to deal with. I hope we dealt with that in an appropriate way for all concerned. And there was difficult decisions that had to be made, but they are the right decisions, and it absolutely underlines our stance that we won't tolerate discriminatory behaviour in any sense from anybody at Portsmouth Football Club. So huge things have happened. We then obviously have had the issues with access control coming into the stadium, hugely disappointing because we'd seen what had happened at clubs up and down the country with problems they'd had with late delivery of season ticket cards, with connectivity falling down. We got all that right, but again we let ourselves down by not having the signage around the stadium, which would have helped supporters have a quicker entry into the stadium. We try to fix that in time for the games that are coming up. But I think at the end of the day, perhaps what's happened here is that for the last 18 months, a number of our staff here have been furloughed. And of course, people started to come back in May, June time ahead of the season. Last season, football continued. We had players in, we had coaches in, but the people who actually go to make a match day happen for supporters were not here. And that has, coming back, a lot of ideas came out at that time, a lot of good ideas, which in the long term will be fantastic for the football club. But we tried to do too much too soon. And we've got to get process right in this football club so we give supporters a great experience each and every time they come to Fratton Park. And the way we do that is we involve supporters in those decisions going back. So we've got a number of ideas going forward, which we'll probably come on to later in the interview, Johnny.
Okay, let's start on some specifics then. Firstly, the academy. Lack of investment, youth staff in rebellion, clear that up.
Absolute rubbish. We were really disappointed to hear that, and I'll start with the process first of all as to where the story came from. It came from Sean O'Driscoll's resignation as head of coaching. It's a decision that Sean informed us of about a few weeks ago. Sean, the head of coaching role involves developing and managing all the coaches throughout your academy. So they develop, they progress, they're managed, and it's a role that is partially funded by the Premier League as well. It's a role that involves a 7-day-a-week operation, unsocial hours in the evening, and Sean felt that he'd come to a period where that was compromising his own personal circumstances and life. He's been in the game a long time, and we're really going to miss him. But he had the decency to let us know a few weeks ago so that he could prepare for his departure on his terms. Unfortunately, somebody decided to leak that to the media, and Sean's not been able to get his statement ready in the way that he would have liked to in terms of the club. But there are some things that have come out of that since, and it's a number of things we need to put to bed. First of all, there's talks about mass rebellions or resignations in the academy, which again, is not true. We've had a number of staff, on the other hand, who have left us for great things. We've had two of the academy staff have gone into first team positions at Portsmouth Football Club. They've been promoted and they're absolutely thrilled because that's their pathway. We've had other staff who have achieved promotions into first team football at other clubs, and another in their respective positions have been, in their professions, have gone on to good things as well. David Price is one such example, who has been doing his doctorate at the University of Portsmouth, and that's given him a new opportunity on a full-time role. David works for us on a part-time basis, and again he's been able to find himself a position in academia, which is something that he's wanted to do for some time. But we've got some great new people coming in. Greg has been looking at the academy. He's put a lot of work into the future direction, the vision, the values, how we can become a high-performance academy, how we align the academy better with the first team. And he's been working very closely with Danny in that score. So we've got a situation whereby we've now got the first team coaches working with the academy coaches. We've got the analysts from both the first team and the academy working together, the recruitment teams working together, the sports science teams working together, the medicine teams working together. It's absolutely brilliant that we can start now to have this shared philosophy, shared identity taking place, and Greg's been magnificent in terms of driving that forward. In terms of Sean's role, because we've known Sean has been going for a few weeks now, we've already started that process of looking for a successor. The role has to be advertised because it is a Premier League funded role, but we've already got some good ideas as to how we're going to do that, and there are some really good candidates who have already come forward expressing an interest in coming to work at Portsmouth Football Club and working for the academy. And let me move on to investment. Again, I've read that the investment has been absolutely shrunk under the Eisners, and that could not be further from the truth. The investment in the academy is just short of £1 million, and that is as high as it's ever been. And coupled with that, we've just invested a multi-million pound purchase of ROCO, and the whole idea of ROCO is that going forward we can align the academy better with the first team. Now, the space we have at ROCO at the moment doesn't give us the ability to bring all the academy pitches into play. It's just the site's just not big enough, but it brings more into play. It allows us to redevelop the site in terms of looking at the play football pitches and how we can create some 3G pitches going forward, some new pitches which can not just be for the academy but can be for community use as well, and gives us the ability to use some of the ROCO building for academy offices. And that's happened the last few weeks. We've just moved the academy staff into the main building, and the first team will follow over the next 12 to 18 months. So it's a longer term project. We're working with stakeholders, and we're going to have a very, very exciting future for our football club based at ROCO. There's some other opportunities that we've got that we can work with Sport England and other stakeholders that we need to start a really constructive dialogue to get to where we want to go. But Category 3 academies, nearly every Cat 3 academy has to rent outside external facilities. And it's something this football club has done and will need to continue to do for a few more years yet until we can potentially look at what the site might bring us. And if it doesn't, we'll continue to work some great facilities. We have an issue in Portsmouth in terms of it's an island. On Tuesday and Thursday evenings, a lot of local football teams are using the facilities so we've got some private facilities that we're using. The Royal Navy have been fantastic over the last few weeks in giving us HMS Collingwood's facilities to train on. Unfortunately, those pitches aren't quite ready, but they will be in November because they've had no love or care on them over the last few months during COVID. But we're putting our ground staff into there. We're going to make sure that those facilities are of an academy standard, that our players can go onto there and play with care. So all these things that have been written about, hugely disappointing, hugely distressing for the academy staff, and I'm upset for Sean as well, because Sean's a brilliant guy who's contributed so much to this football club. A lot of the people who have progressed, a lot of the staff, that's down to Sean's work with them over the last few years, helping them get the opportunities that they now have. And others that are with us, they too will have a pathway to go on. Let's remember, an academy is not just about the players and those players having dreams to one day become professional footballers. It's about the staff as well, who will have their own career aspirations. They also want to move on. Many of them want to move into first team football, and academy football provides a great pathway of doing that.
Still a lot to get through, so let's go on to season tickets. What can you say to season ticket holders who are still waiting to receive theirs?
Yeah, we've had a small number of people who have called us. We've got a reprint list that we're going through. I think it's about 200 to 300 people who have advised they haven't received their season tickets yet. They will be contacted ahead of the Sunderland game with details of where and how they can pick those tickets up prior to the game. Brilliant.
Is there a date for when season ticket holders can use the Visa features of the new season tickets?
Yeah, that's something I put on hold for the time being. I think it's important we get the basics right at this football club, and the Visa card going forward is going to be something which will give season ticket holders a number of added value benefits. But we've got to make sure, again, that it works. We've got to be absolutely sure that when people are loading money onto their cards, that money is taken good care of, and we've got to make sure we've got the organisation behind us to make sure that those rewards schemes are properly managed. Otherwise, we're just, again, running before we can walk. So that we're hoping will come in prior to Christmas, certainly in the second half of the season, where we can start to activate those benefits and people can start using them. But let's get the basics right. Let's get people inside the stadium and get those things working properly, and make sure that everybody has got their season ticket cards so they're not disadvantaged.
Why wasn't the Fanza rewards app for season ticket holders ready at the beginning of the season and when will it be live?
I think for the reasons I've just said, Johnny, so it's something that's coming for is coming later, and we have to make sure we've got the basics right. It's the same with the what's called NFC, mobile ticketing, coming into the stadium. I read horror stories at other stadiums experiencing those in the first couple of days of the season. I just wanted to make sure before we get to launching NFC ticketing that we've got, we test it, we pilot it. We're going to look at a small group of about 20 supporters, and then we'll phase it in gradually over the season, so we get to a really well digitally connected stadium.
On we go to match day. What are you going to do to avoid the access issues that have occurred over the last 3 matches?
Well, I'm very, very sorry that people experienced problems at the Cambridge United game with the queues. As I said before, we tested a lot of things. Staff worked through the whole week, many working into the night to make sure the connectivity issues were working. And and we did get the majority of season ticket cards out. In fact, we got them all out, but some, for whatever reasons, haven't reached people, as we said, a small number of those. So again, we didn't make it clear as to where and how those cards should be used, and we got it terribly wrong, because with some simple signage, some better explanation, social media videos or whatever, it would have been something which would have been really, really helpful, I think, and people would have known to get in the stadium much quicker. So I think the experience of the last game that those cards were used was Cambridge, so people will now be used to using them, but we have got signage in place for this game. We're also got a number of volunteers who are going to support us on Saturday in the queues, because if you're coming with your season ticket card, you scan the card on top, and if you're using your ticket or your phone, you need to insert it into the blue flashing light slot underneath. So we're just going to, a lot of people maybe not been at the Cambridge United game. There's going to be a big crowd here, a sellout crowd here on Saturday, so there's going to be more people coming into the stadium, so working with them. We're also conscious we had some issues with junior cards. So again, Maurice Stedman has organised some separate lanes for children coming into the stadium, so they can come in through a separate gate as well, and we can resolve any of those issues. The last thing we want is children to be separated by their parents, so by coming in this particular way we can resolve that too. But I must ask supporters and say to supporters, please do come down early on Saturday. It's going to be a huge crowd, a big crowd, and it's a sellout one, and we want to make sure we do get everybody in before kick-off. And where supporters can probably help us is if they can come a little bit earlier, that would be great. In return, we're going to do some meal deals inside the stadium for supporters arriving up before 2:30. We've got we're going to get the Manchester United Everton game onto the TVs and as many of the concourses as we possibly can, and on the big screens there's going to be an opportunity to relive that great cup final between Portsmouth and Sunderland of just a few years ago.
Now, I actually know the answer to this, but answer it anyway. Are you, CEO, happy with our matchday experience? And have you experienced matchday around the stadium and seen how fans are treated and served? And do you think this is acceptable?
No, I'm not happy with the matchday experience, because I think you can always improve. No matter how good you get, there's always, you can always listen, you can always learn. And the way you listen and learn is being around on a match day talking to supporters. And that's something that, I subscribe to. It's helped me incredibly in my last 2 football clubs by having that approach. I'm not somebody who, sits in the boardroom for an hour before kick-off and takes my seat. In fact, the last 2 games, I've not taken my seat until well into the first half, because I've been monitoring the issues around the stadium, talking to supporters, coming up with some great ideas and things that we can do to improve it, and that's been great. So let's look at the concourses. The club made a decision last year that it would take the concourses in-house. I've reversed that decision. I don't think it's right that football clubs have the skills or the experiences or indeed the resource to operate a very, very complicated operation, which basically is at its manic for 15 minutes during half time, and then you've got an hour before kick-off. The bar facilities here are not up to scratch. We don't have sufficient pumps on the counters. In the North Stand, for example, the kiosk closest to the Milton end has 6 pumps on it. 3 pumps at one end and 3 pumps on the other. Now you try and work behind that as a member of staff, it ain't great, and that's why people are having to queue. So we've been talking to the brewery. That's the first thing I think we can improve. The brewery are telling us at the moment, like most businesses, they're struggling to get equipment in. It's a priority for them, but could take a few months before new pumps can come in and go in the stadium. We'll continue to be on their backs on that one because I want that in as soon as we possibly can. In the meantime, we've been purchasing and getting hold of some extra mobile bar units. So that will help to some extent, but it's not the complete solution. We need to work at that. Managed to bring in a new partner who I'm extremely excited about in terms of operating our kiosks. They are a business which is based on the South Coast, so that's great. They have a real feel for local tastes and what local people want. They're a business that increased the number of pies at Brighton and Hove Albion from sales of 4,000 a game to 8,000 a game, which I think makes Brighton the best pie sales stadium in football in the United Kingdom. So and they are very, very customer service focused. They're not a faceless business. They're a business which is run by the people who founded it, and I think they're going to be brilliant for Portsmouth Football Club going forward, and they're willing to learn and willing to listen. Again, they haven't got all the answers on day one, but we will get there, and we'll work extremely hard to make sure that they've got the capability and the backing from us to make a successful operation.
And just to add, you've been around the Victory Lounge, in the lounges, outside in the queues, so you've seen firsthand how things are going. Yeah,
I've been in the queues, I've been at the back of the stands, I've walked around. We found out about car parking, for example, from the car parking steward on my first day, and they were telling me that now we've moved to an online booking system, which is good. That has been something which you struggle to find on the website, so we fixed that because it was there, but it wasn't easy as a supporter to navigate your way around and find. So that's one improvement we put into place. You talked about the Victory Lounge. I had a really, really good session in there with a group of supporters.
Not drinking session, which you imagine.
No, sadly not. But there's a lot of things there that came up which we were able to fix. So things like, simple things like TVs working in there and being on when people arrive, opening on earlier, having the food ready to go when people come in. Having a guest speaker come in and the former player coming to speak to supporters in there would just make that experience so much better. The queuing systems for the bar we're working on, that's not immediate fix, but something we'll get to as well. Looking at some children's activity corners in there, and they just came up with a whole host of ideas, and there's so much low-lying fruit that we can pick up and make work. Hopefully there'll be one of those things that we can immediately put in, and then we can get a little group working in there and continue to come up with some ideas that work well. And other things you pick up on a match day. I met a lady at the back of the North Stand who was showing me the panels which commemorate everybody who made that fantastic investment into Pompey all those years ago to save the football club. And she was telling me the story that her husband's name was on there, and it's something of a pilgrimage from her to come and see that. And two of the boards have gone missing. So again, I wouldn't have picked that up necessarily straight away. I know how much that means to people, so we're correcting that, and those boards will be replaced. But those are all things that you learn from walking around yourself, questioning why you do things, finding out where you can improve. And I just encourage, if I'm walking around and people, don't be shy, come and talk to me, tell me what you want to see, give me your own experiences. Hopefully you've got some good things to tell me, but tell me about the things you want to see improved at Portsmouth Football Club.
Okay, swiftly on to stadium development. There are reports that Micahel Eisner said we will not build a new North Stand until we make the Premier League. Is this true? And if so, how do we grow our revenue to provide the manager with a bigger playing budget to get there, considering the H&S work scheduled only adds a few hundred extra seats?
Well, if we hadn't done the health and safety work, we'd have been in a situation, said before, probably dropping potentially down to 10,000. We had a situation at the beginning of the season where we got it up to 16, and through the backing and support of the council have been really, really helpful. We've managed to get that capacity back up to over 17,000, which we'll certainly take advantage of this weekend. So we'll get back to 20, we'll get back to 20 plus. The plans for the North Stand are not contingent on Premier League promotion. They're contingent on us being able to make sure that we can get all the infrastructure works around the stadium fixed and the access. There are tremendous pressures on the local vicinity in terms of match days. People will know that we're having discussions with a number of stakeholders locally as to how we can improve those access routes. And at that point, we can then start to look about developing the area in and around the north stand, which will then enable us to take the capacity up. And as if anybody who's read the Portsmouth local plan from the council, which was published last week and is currently out for consultation, will actually see some of those exciting ideas which we fully support in terms of how the area will look like. And that potentially will allow our stadium to grow up to 25,000 plus. That's the plan, but we've got to get things right. And whether Premiership football comes sooner rather than later, then great. It's about getting infrastructure right first before we can get to that capacity. So that's the real story of how things are looking to be planned. Yeah, we're really committed to that. In terms of how we do it, in terms of revenue, 40% of our revenue comes from matchday ticketing. So it's incumbent on us to look at the other 60% of our revenue sources and how we grow those as well, to make sure we can continue to deliver the best possible budget for Danny's squad. A budget, as I said before, which is as good as it's ever been.
Now, you've already alluded heavily to the training ground, but are there any plans of what we will do with the site? And if so, when will they be shared with fans?
Yeah, as I said before, the first stage at the moment is working on the building. So we're getting that building fit for purpose. That in turn is important because we want to grow the membership base of the gym at Roco, because that's another really good source of income coming into the football club. Now we own it, and again we can reuse that money to do a lot of the things that we want to do at the site and indeed down at Fratton Park. So get the building right, that's what we're working on first, dealing with all the health and safety issues, optimising the space in there, a lot of wasted space and things we can do more with, get the academy in there, which they already are, get the first team into the building, and then looking at the site as a whole, what we want to do then, first team move into the building, we can then get rid of the porter cabin buildings, which have limited shelf life on them anyway. I think Mark did an incredible deal to get those in some years ago at an unbelievable price, but they had probably about 5 to 6 years when he bought them, and we're probably about 7 to 8 years now of using them. So we've got a limited time in terms of what we can do with them. So we've got an option to either replace them, but the better solution has got to be to move into the building. That in turn frees a lot of space up for extra pitches. We can increase the number of pitches both for first team and academy use, and then the bigger picture then is to look at how we can develop the play football facility as well into potentially 3G surfaces, which can be used not just for first team and academy use, but also community usage as well.
Okay, on the pitch matters, the club has committed a lot of money to developing behind the scenes. Will the same level of commitment be shown to developing on the pitch too? Our transfer budget seemed unable to compete with other teams in the summer window.
Well, our transfer budget we actually overspent. We ended up paying money for Joe Morrell later in the window, which the owners sanctioned an overspend on the budget. And in terms of wages, we then overshot that towards the end by the purchases of Micahel Eisner on loan, and then the loan signing as well of Marlon Romeo. So those two things took us to the situation where we asked the owners if we could have a little bit more to bring those in, and they were happy to support Danny and myself in terms of doing that. So we've got we've got a decent budget. We had a particular challenge this year in that we had, when we started with the budget, we had 2/3 of players add a contract, and we had 2/3 of the budget committed to the 1/3 that were left over. So we've had to really start to be very smart in the way that we recruited and how we went out to do it. We had some big names to replace. I think we brought some really good players into the building. I think it's a matter of time before all that starts to click properly. Got to be patient. Patience is not really something that you have in football. I get that, I understand it, I've been in the game long enough to know that. But I think we'll start to see progress over the next few windows. This window's all been about bringing some experience into the squad that can cope with the adaptation and the style that Danny wants to play. I think down the line what we would then want to do is to bring some really young talented assets into the building that are good enough to play for the first team, that can grow and develop and enable the club to reach its aspirations. So yeah, we're committed to doing as much as we possibly can to supporting Danny. We have gone out and spent the budget as it is, but so we've got to be smart in the way that we approach January, because every January does give you an opportunity to further strengthen, and if we can, then we can start to look at what we can possibly do to take it forward. And we're not just looking at January, we're looking at next summer as well, because we know, what we're going to have to do and where we're going to be for next summer. And by that time, hopefully Danny will have a squad in place which is one that he can say is truly one that players that he's inherited, that he really wants to be part of the squad going forward. New acquisitions he's already brought in, identifying that talent that will come in as well. We've got four guiding principles, I think, for football going forward. One is to make sure that we can develop, create an identity, a philosophy, a football style of play that's synonymous with Portsmouth Football Club, right from the academy right through to the first team. We've got to be very, very smart in the way that we recruit, secondly, and that is something that we bring players in who can align to that style and philosophy. We want to create pathways for academy players to come through. The commitment to the academy, as I said earlier, is really strong. So we want to make sure there's that pathway where our best talented academy players can progress to first team football. It may mean we have to be a bit more ruthless. You come in the academy at 8, it's not a passport to being in the academy till you're 18, and we need to be very flexible so we don't lose out and identify talent at older age groups, 12s, 13s, 14s, even 15s, 16s that we can bring in. So we're going to be very fluid in that respect. And number 4, it's about developing a high performance culture in the first team and the academy, doing everything we possibly can to give us that, those marginal games, that extra 1 or 2% that can make all the difference out there on the pitch. Not just on a Saturday in the short term, not just next Saturday, next month, next week, next year, for the long-term good of Portsmouth Football Club. It's a long-term strategic plan that we've got to put into place.
Okay, you've said you're still looking at roles across the club to decide whether a sporting director is needed. When can we expect a decision to be made?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about sporting directors, technical directors, performance directors, football operations directors. I'm very, very clear now as to where I think we're going to go in the interim period, not just in the football, but across the whole football club. We've had some people who are very talented in the organisation. I'm going to give some opportunities to them. We've got to fix the organisational stresses in the business as well. A lot of people have come back from COVID and had to deal with a lot of things, and quite frankly in some areas we're not properly resourced. So we're going to be fixing that. There'll be some announcements coming out in the very, very shortly. Got to speak to everybody over the next few days to finalise things, but we're not too far away from looking at both the football operation and indeed the backroom staff here at Fratton Park.
Why did the club announce that we would have bespoke kits only to end up with the same Nike catalogue kits? They are nice but not bespoke.
Well, I think those were for my time in terms of how it works. What I do know with Nike, you've got a top brand, but by having a top brand, unless you're buying in significant numbers, you end up with bespoke kits. Now you can tinker around with certain elements of the template they give you, but not completely. I think the home and away kit, there's some subtle differences in there that you won't see on another template, but it completes the template that they have. So I'm not sure whether you ever get to a situation, unless you're going to order thousands and thousands and thousands of shirts, that you get to a bespoke situation with Nike. Other kit manufacturers do give you that option, but probably not as powerful a brand as what Nike is. And the other advantage we have is that we're able to have a partnership with Nike, who will run our store, take responsibility for staffing it, resourcing all the stock, all those bits and bobs that take a bit of time up, but gives the football club a really, really healthy return. So there's really, really good advantages of working there. But one of the knockbacks a little bit is you are committed to that kit. But I think we've got some good kits this year. We've already started work on next year, and from what I've seen, and again making those tweaks that I've just discussed, the bits that we can change on the template, I think we're going to have a really, really strong offering for next year as well.
Why are the Pompey Women shirts not going to be available to buy? The mint green away shirt has had a very positive reaction by fans. Why didn't you ensure it was available at launch?
Well, isn't it a great shirt? I love it. It's a fantastic looking shirt. I think the women had a big say in choosing that kit as well, and well done to them, because it's really, really popular. Nike are getting some across because it's one of their not one of their mainstream kits. They don't produce a lot of those, so they've told us that they're trying to get some over. Like everybody in the country at the moment, they're suffering problems with distribution because getting them from abroad into the country at the moment. That's a problem which is affecting many industries in the country, but we're quite hopeful that and they've told us they're very keen that we can probably get these in prior to Christmas, probably in November, so we'll keep supporters updated on that one, Johnny. So that is something that wouldn't it be great to see as well. A very, very popular kit, and well done to the women's team for the great start that they've made to this season. They've done fantastic.
Given the club is branding itself heavily as a community club along with its community work, as well as the hot topic of gambling in football at the moment, what's your take on the club having a betting partner, advertising them and doing sponsored posts on their social media?
Well, there's two betting partners at the football club. First of all, you've got Sky Bet, which is the league's main sponsor and pays a considerable amount of money into the league, which is then shared with its member clubs. And you've also then got a partnership here at the football club with VBet. So for us, I don't think it's anything that we want to see on our shirts. We have a loose arrangement with VBet, which, as you said, goes across a few social media posts. And there's, I think there's one or two boards in the stadium, but nothing more than that. I think it's a fact of life in football for many, many years. I mean, there has been a long-standing relationship, if you go all the way back, between football and betting. You can go back to the pools, for example, with Littlewoods or Vernon's, but and other pools brands are probably available as well. But it was something that we used to have betting inside stadiums. We don't have betting partners anymore, and it's something which I think is going to be taken out of our hands anyway. There's a review into gambling which the government's due to report on at the end of November, and that will something which many people are being consulted. There's been a consultation process in that, but we expect that decision to come up. And one of the things in that is that betting in terms of shirts may go exactly the same way as we've seen happen with tobacco in sport and alcohol in sport. So it's probably something which is coming soon in terms of restrictions on it. It's important that when we do these things, we take a really, really responsible approach to anything that we put out, and that's something that we'll continue to do whilst we've got the ability to work with Sky Bet and VBet in football. It's an interesting one for football because it's worth £40 million to the EFL, and how do you fill that hole overall in football? So there's some interesting debates coming in. Football, sport, motor racing in particular has got through the tobacco issues, and cricket used to be sponsored by John Player. Remember those days, and a number of other sports had cigarette and alcohol brands behind them. I worked in the beer industry for many years, and Carling was a main sponsor of the league and was adorned across cricket shirts and football shirts. But I think great that we've got support, that financial support, but we've got to be seen to take a really, really responsible attitude when we're going from it. I've seen some research, the Football League's research, which shows there necessarily isn't a link between advertising and problem gambling, but it's something I'm consciously aware of, and the responsibilities that we have, all of us in football, when working with gambling partners.
Now, do you foresee your next 3 months being less stressful, less hectic as things sort of sort themselves out? No,
I think we've got some. The biggest challenge we're going to have, Johnny, is the North Stand lower. So we're going to start that consultation process about how we do that over the next few weeks, and start to develop and deliver a programme so that when those moves take place after Christmas, people know exactly what they're doing, where they're going, and have a chance to shape it. It will be. Appreciate it won't be necessarily ideal for people to have to move during the season, but it's something we've simply got to do, otherwise the capacity will go down again for next season as opposed to going in the direction that we want it to do. So a little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain in respect of that. But I'm looking forward to really starting to shape the direction of the football club. We had a really good meeting with all the staff at the back end of August, where we looked at how we can integrate the football club much more closely with Pompey in the community and all the great work they do. Pompey Women filling a really big part of the football club. The Roco gym now, and the staff who work there feeling that they're part of the Pompey family as well. And we've got some other people who work with us in terms of obviously Nike shop staff as well. I want this to be one really, really big family in terms of the way we work internally, but also externally with our partners, with the university, the Navy, another huge institution in Portsmouth, with the City Council, that we can all combine together to deliver something really, really special for Portsmouth. And we've got to have a plan, some goals, and everybody's got to be aligned to those going forward internally to try and make that happen. So that's one thing I really want to get into, to make sure that strategically we've got some good things happening, but operationally seeking to improve everything we do at Portsmouth Football Club. We've had these challenges initially. I know why they've happened. It's nobody's fault within the business, but it's been really, really difficult. It's coming out of COVID to get everything right first time, and come back and just switch the light on. So, but we'll get there. And we're going to be much stronger. We're going to be a much better football club for all the lessons that we've learned over the last few months. And I'm really, really excited about what everybody here can deliver. Not just me, but a great team of staff that I'm working with. Hopefully a lot of people rejuvenated in new roles, feeling they've got the support and the backing to deliver the best for this football club.
Andrew, thank you for your honesty, thank you for your time, and we must do this again.
We will do. Thank you, Johnny.